Caruth. He's the speaker this evening.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's press event with Superintendent Kathy Hoffman and Dr. Kara Christ. We'll begin with remarks from our speakers today, and then we will have a question and answer session at the conclusion of that. If you'd like to be called on for a question, please raise your hand on Zoom, and we will unmute and call on you in order. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I want to introduce the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Kathy Hoffman.
Thank you, Dr. Christ, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to Dr. Christ and the 3 public school superintendents for joining me today. I asked Dr. Christ to join me today to address the critical intersection of public health and public education. And I asked Superintendents John Caruth of Vail Schools, Dr. Quentin Boyce of Roosevelt School District, and Dr. Andy Forlis of Mesa Public Schools to share with our fellow Arizonans what our school communities are facing right now. Dr. Christ and our public health officials have been telling us for several weeks that we are experiencing a new spike in COVID-19. And without serious changes from us, the adults making daily choices that determine the virus's path, we cannot expect these numbers to head in a safe direction. As cases rise in Arizona, school leaders face the impossible decision of closing school buildings for in-person learning so that students and teachers do not become sick. As Superintendent of Public Instruction, I will be the very first person to say that when our schools close in-person instruction, it is devastating to our communities. Parents are thrown in flux as they try to decide the best model for distance learning, whether at home or at an on-site learning center. Educators must adapt quickly, transitioning from in-person and hybrid to distance learning. And students are tossed into uncertainty, further away from the friends and teachers that support them, further from the normalcy we want every child to have in their formative years. The more that we ignore this virus, the less stability we provide our students and families. This is the consequence of not taking this virus seriously. I want to remind everyone that many of Arizona's schools, especially those on our tribal nations, have not yet been able to open for in-person or hybrid learning at all this year. We were never fully out of the woods with this virus, and this recent spike tells us that the students who have been engaged in distance learning since March could remain so for some time. That's a long time for a student to go without interactions with their peers, without the familiarity, structure, and support found in a typical school day. And I'm heartbroken to hear about the rise of youth mental health issues, such as increased feelings of hopelessness and youth suicide in our state. To be a young person in 2020 is to experience a world not even the adults in their lives can make sense of. While our day-to-day lives may feel confined to the cities and neighborhoods we live in, the truth is that during a pandemic, our actions have far-reaching consequences. It will take efforts across the state to prevent the twin health crises of this virus and youth suicide. One child lost to suicide or one educator lost to COVID-19 are one too many. And already this year, we have far surpassed that. This is a year where we have all already sacrificed so much. Some parents, especially mothers, have left the workplace to care for their families and to help manage distance learning. Many of us have not hugged an older parent since March. Our daily patterns have been disruptive, and I know this is tiring. But we cannot lose our determination now. We should expect efforts to protect our students and schools to come with continued sacrifice. For example, last week, the Arizona Interscholastic Association made recommendations according to COVID data that winter sport practices and competitions are not safe to begin in 8 out of our 15 counties, including Maricopa. I know this is difficult news for many students and families. I'm a lifelong competitive swimmer. I know how essential sports, teamwork, and physical activity are to the spirit of our communities and to the character development of our students. But I take every single life in our school communities seriously. In just the last 2 weeks, 2 high school coaches lost their lives to COVID-19. When a student or colleague loses their life, our teachers, students, and school leaders must all try to forge ahead in teaching and learning while dealing with the devastation of losing a close community member. The thought of missing a sports season is difficult, but the thought of our students and educators dealing with that loss while trying to manage successful learning is nearly impossible. In a year where we have experienced so much instability, change, and loss, I implore my fellow Arizonans to take this virus seriously. As adults, we must be the examples and leaders our students are counting on. And as school leaders, we must examine our local data and follow the benchmarks that indicate when a school should be engaged in distance, hybrid, or in-person learning. I would like to turn the microphone over to our school leaders now so that they can share with you directly what it means to guide a school community through a global pandemic. And after our superintendents, we will hear from Dr. Christ. Since the onset of COVID-19, we have worked with AZDHS on a number of initiatives, and Dr. Christ will provide an update about our latest partnerships, including Healthy Kids Open Schools, information on new efforts to increase testing capacity, and how our agencies are working together to build mental health infrastructure for our educators and school leaders. First up, Superintendent Carruth is joining us virtually from Vail.
Thank you, Superintendent Hoffman. I hope you all can hear me. And thank you for understanding that I'm not able to be there with you in person. Honestly, the fluid nature of dealing with education in a pandemic makes it a little too difficult to break away for a half a day and come and join you, but I'm honored to have a few moments of remarks this afternoon. My name is John Carruth, and I'm honored to serve as a Vail Unified School District Superintendent. Our community lies in southeast Pima County, and we serve just under 14,000 students and their parents across 22 wonderful schools. We are incredibly proud of our students and their success. I'm inspired and grateful for the heroic efforts of our staff as they've put into this year to rise to the demands of delivering education amidst a pandemic. Following the health metrics and guidance from our local Pima County Health Department, we have been operating our schools in a hybrid model for the past 7 weeks. I've been in education in Arizona for over 25 years. No previous experience compares to this year. Disappointment and lost opportunity for our young people is held in tension with keeping students and staff physically safe from the COVID virus. We have experienced the tragedy of death by suicide of 2 of our students this year. We have seen a significant increase in staff who have left the profession due to medical reasons, concerns for their health, or to take care of their own child or family. Yet every day in our classrooms, there is innovation, joy, and hope. It's learning. Every day, learning is happening. It's the magic that happens when caring adults pour themselves into the lives of young people. To do this work well, we have to take it personally. Every day, I wake up and pray for the wisdom and strength to make decisions that will keep loss to a minimum. Loss of learning and opportunity, loss of people, students and staff. Our motto in the Vail School District is where education is a community effort. It's been our guiding light as we navigate these uncharted waters. Today, I ask you and all of Arizona to join us in putting that motto into action. We must prioritize education through our individual and collective choices. This requires us to make some hard decisions about activities and gatherings that we participate in outside of school. Simply, we must decrease the spread of this virus to ensure that schools can continue to remain open. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Carruth. And next is Dr. Forlis.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Hoffman. I'm honored to be here to represent Mesa Public Schools as the very proud superintendent who is leading 85 schools with 58,000 children and 9,000 employees through this global pandemic. We came together as a community and we created the safe, strong, ready plan to open up our schools. Hundreds of staff members worked tirelessly to design models for how we were going to reinvent what school would look like. We opened remotely on August 4th. We moved to a hybrid model that we call modified in-person on September 14th. And then on October 12th, we moved to 5 days of modified in-person learning. We are adhering the best that we can to mitigation strategies, wearing a mask, hand washing, checking for symptoms, and most importantly, staying distant as we can, not only in our schools, but in our communities as well. We had to make some tough decisions, as Superintendent Carruth mentioned. We've had to make very tough decisions around what learning is going to look like to make sure that we are safe, we have strong learning environments, and we are ready for what comes our way. We continue to watch the metrics. We know that the public health metrics have opened up Mesa Public Schools. And it is the individual case counts, the trends of those cases, and the behaviors and the culture within the school that help us to determine how we are going to choose the most appropriate learning model. Currently, Mesa High School is the only school in our school district that is operating as a 2-day modified in-person learning model. High levels of case counts that were spread throughout the school was a trigger to dig deeper into that data. We had taken other steps, such as quarantining sports teams. That did not stop the spread. So we moved to that 2 days of modified in-person learning, and that will continue and we will monitor. Our goal, of course, is to get our kids back, all of our kids, into 5 days of instruction, but we have to make really wise decisions. A community message went out to the Mesa Public Schools community today that November 30th, which is the Monday after Thanksgiving, will be an all remote learning day. That was made because we know that public health officials are talking to us about the impact that the Thanksgiving holiday will have. So we want our kids to stay home one more day. That way we can mitigate the spread. If symptoms occur, start to crop up, that we can get our kids and our staff tested so that they can properly recover and not bring the virus into our schools. We also know, as Superintendent Carruth mentioned, that we have incredible innovation happening in our classrooms, and that takes time and that takes planning. So our employees will be working in a virtual environment on November 30th, and our teachers will be able to have the critical time to plan for a strong end of this semester, and they will be ready for second semester. None of these decisions come lightly. We look at every piece of data. We look at our employee attendance data. We're looking at our student attendance data. And we continue to make the very best decisions to keep our kids in school and to keep our kids safe. We need a community effort to continue that our schools to stay open and to make sure that we're making wise decisions, because we know that while many of us have COVID fatigue, COVID has not been fatigued. So it is still alive and well, and we have to do all that we can to keep it out of our schools. So I ask for your continued community support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Boyce.
Thank you, Superintendent Hoffman. My name is Quentin Boyce. I'm the proud superintendent of the Roosevelt School District. We are located in South Phoenix. We cover 3 zip codes, serve roughly 8,000 students, and have 19 amazing learning communities. Just like everyone else, we're currently navigating this COVID pandemic. Although it feels like our entire system has made 7 years worth of progress in 7 months when it comes to innovation and thinking differently. I'm extremely proud of our community as we've heavily invested in technology prior to the COVID pandemic. Every student has an Apple device and every teacher has 2. We've doubled down on professional development because we understand that devices are only half of the equation, but how to use those devices in a way to really augment and help amplify the teaching and learning experience is paramount. Since spring, when campuses closed, we've worked extremely hard to close the digital divide. Many of our students were not connected to high-speed, reliable internet at home. And working with community partners, we've made tremendous gains and we've closed the gap. But the reality, it is an arms race. We get every student connected, and then more students and their families fall on hard times. And so we're trying to keep up with the demand. Like every other system, we launched this academic year in a virtual setting. And we made the decision prior to benchmarks being formalized. And it's because context matters. We know that in our 3 zip codes that we occupy in South Phoenix, we've seen some of the highest transmission rates and percent positivity within our own backyard. We also know it's no secret there is a direct correlation between COVID and poverty rates. And so for us, for our community, it was really important to take care of our students and take care of our families. We've decided to be champions for our students and our families and our staff and be very mindful and be very data driven. We're currently still virtual only. As mentioned by Superintendent Hoffman, there are certain communities that live in that space. We monitor the benchmarks every week and make decisions accordingly. We do offer in-person experiences for some of our most targeted groups of students in small in-person sessions by appointment, just to make sure that we can support them to the best of our ability. We're positioned to offer an in-person experience on the other side of winter break, but the reality is the numbers are concerning. We're monitoring those numbers as we get closer to winter break. I want our students back. I want our students back in our schools, but this is incredibly difficult. I worry about the social and emotional state of our students not being in school. I realize and understand how difficult it is for teachers feeling like they're relearning their craft for the first time in this virtual space. I think about our administrators learning how to lead all over again in a totally different way. Our district level teams, our governing boards are making impossible decision after impossible decision. We still remain data driven. And so when we make decisions in our community, we try not to act from an emotional standpoint, but a data driven standpoint. And again, we understand that school is the best place for students, but not at the expense of safety. Our students in our communities oftentimes live in multi-generational homes. That means we're not just talking about mom, dad, brother and sister, but we're talking about grandparents, abuelos, nanas. And that's really important, and that influences the decisions that we make. We want to get back to what we would consider business as usual. And schools have actually demonstrated that we're champions when it comes to mitigation protocols. But the reality is there are nights and weekends and things that happen outside of the school. And what happens outside of the school impacts what happens inside of the school. So I'm here today and I appreciate the opportunity and the experience just to really articulate how important it is to get COVID cases under control so that we can get back to the normality of teaching and learning that we truly love, because it's been an incredibly difficult year so far. Superintendent.
Thank you so much, Dr. Christ.
So thank you, Superintendent Hoffman, and a sincere thank you to all of our education leaders. You guys are doing an amazing job during very challenging times. Our schools play such an important role in the lives of our children. I want to provide an update on the trends our public health experts are seeing in Arizona and the steps we're taking to protect Arizonans, especially our students and teachers during the COVID-19 pandemic. The spread of COVID-19 continues moving in the wrong direction, with a significant increase over the past week. Public health officials across the state are working in collaboration to combat this pandemic. But to date, a total of 259,699 cases have been reported to public health. The recent increase in cases has resulted in an increase in the COVID-19 rates in many counties, and last week the percent positivity increased to 9%. We are seeing increased cases among all age groups. And over the past few weeks, Arizona has seen an increase in the COVID-like illness data and the 7-day average of cases and hospital usage. I want you to know that at the Arizona Department of Health Services, we remain on high alert. Our team continues to monitor health-related data beyond COVID-19. And I know I have discussed these numbers before, but I think they bear repeating. During the most recent Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System survey, we gained some alarming insight about our state's youth. So this is a survey that occurs every 2 years and asks our 9th to 12th graders about risk-taking behavior. One question asked, during the past 12 months, did you ever feel so sad or hopeless for almost every day for 2 weeks or more in a row that you stopped doing some usual activities? In 2019, over 40% of Arizona students reported feeling so sad or hopeless that they stopped doing their usual activities within the last 12 months. This is higher than the national estimate of 36.7%. Almost 21% of the high schoolers responding indicated that they had contemplated suicide. 16% had made a plan. 10% reported a suicide attempt, and 4% reported that the attempt resulted in an injury that had to be treated by a doctor or nurse within the last 12 months. I'm a mom of 3 young children, and this is devastating to hear, and this was pre-COVID. It shows that we have a critical need for coping strategies and access to mental health services for our youth. Tragically, this year we have already surpassed last year with the number of suicides in our children. For all of 2019, we had 38 suicides in children under the age of 17 years. In 2020, we have already had 43 suicides in that same age group. It reminds us that this year has been extremely difficult for everyone, but especially our children. Keeping our kids in school for in-person learning is one of our priorities. We're working to contain COVID-19 from all angles, and we continue to take further action in light of the recent increases. Our actions to date include increasing access to testing, providing additional resources to school, and partnering with businesses and schools to mitigate the spread. So today, we're launching a new campaign called Healthy Kids Open Schools to provide schools and parents tools they can use to keep their kids healthy, prevent transmission, and keep schools open. This campaign focuses on the importance of keeping kids home when they're sick or have a positive test result, the importance of following public health recommendations, including a 14-day quarantine or a 10-day isolation period, and notifying school administration of any symptoms or test results. And very importantly, requiring mask use at school or on the bus, in addition to any time kids are around other kids that they don't live with, including extracurricular activities, sports, and just hanging out with their friends. We want everyone who needs to have access to a face covering to have one. That's why we've partnered with Hanes to provide 5 free masks to students and their families. Families can go to azhealth.gov/order masks to have free masks shipped to them. In addition to the social media messaging, the campaign includes a website with information about when to keep kids home from school, where families can get free masks, and nearby testing locations. We have also been working with our partners at Arizona State University and the Department of Education to put together a pilot to provide additional resources to schools. These will provide our pilot schools with things like surveillance testing, communication materials, public health technical assistance, and virtual education resources. Over the past few months, we've worked to build up our lab capacity, ensuring that Arizonans have access to COVID-19 testing with quick turnaround results. We continue to see increased testing, and our major laboratories are still reporting less than a 24 to 48 turnaround time. And there are currently over 500 locations where Arizonans can get tested. Specifically for schools, though, since August, we've been adding community testing sites in our school districts to increase our families' and schools' access to testing. In the next few weeks, we will be adding additional testing sites for free for teachers and their communities. These will include both drive-through nasal testing and the ASU's saliva-based testing. And to address the impacts of COVID-19 on our healthcare workers, recently AZDHS partnered with the Arizona Medical Association and Access to provide free peer-to-peer counseling for healthcare workers. We are working to develop a similar strategy to offer teachers and school administrators free peer-to-peer counseling to help them cope with the impact COVID-19 is having on their schools and students. But in order to keep our schools open, everyone must do their part. This includes schools, families, and businesses. As businesses have reopened, we've developed requirements to implement mitigation measures, such as reduced capacity and requiring masking up. As of yesterday, we've received over 2,000 unique complaints about establishment, and of those unique complaints, 90% have been addressed and closed out. We encourage everyone to be part of the solution. If you see an establishment not requiring the COVID mitigation requirements, please let us know through the COVID compliance hotline or online at azhealth.gov/compliance-COVID-19. And we really need your help. With the holidays quickly approaching, in order to keep schools open, everyone must do their part. And we know that everyone has their own special holiday traditions. So we have a menu of options for ways to safely celebrate to choose from. So doing even one of these options will reduce your risk, while doing more of them would even be better. We recommend moving your celebrations outside to your backyard or to a local park where outdoor air provides better ventilation. If you do celebrate indoors, create spaces for people to be distanced from one another. Use your patio, open your windows and doors to increase ventilation. Reduce the size of your gathering to a smaller number than typical. You can use a tablet and virtual meeting programs to link multiple families together without exposing one another. And consider celebrating virtually with your college-age students or your higher risk and elderly relatives. Stay physically distanced. Don't hug people from outside your household. Avoid passing food items or serving buffet style. And if you're hosting, make masks and hand sanitizer available for all guests. And one final recommendation is to do your Black Friday shopping online. From COVID-19 to influenza to suicide, there are so many challenges that Arizonans are facing. While Arizona has prioritized suicide prevention strategies over the past few years, we can see that the impact of COVID-19 makes it more important than ever. And while it's important to stay physically distanced, it's important to stay socially connected. And we know that this has been a very difficult year. And we understand that many have grown very tired of the mitigation strategies, but we can't let up. So please, wear a mask when you're in public, stay physically distanced from people you don't live with, consider moving small gatherings outdoors to reduce transmission, wash your hands frequently and avoid large gatherings, and stay home if you're sick. And finally, please get your influenza shot. All of this will go a long way in keeping our community safe, our schools open, and our kids and our loved ones healthy. Thank you. So we will now open up for any questions.
First up, Lily Altavena.
Hi, folks. I have a question for the school superintendents. Could you describe some of the behavior you're seeing outside of school that you think is possibly driving outbreaks inside of schools or could potentially put schools at risk of closing?
Hi, Lily. This is Andy. I'd be happy to take that question. We are seeing the effects today, actually. Our case counts inside of Mesa Public Schools have a direct connection to Halloween. And we also know that we have had families that have hosted their own homecoming parties. We've not done those at school, so they've done them in the neighborhoods. We know that sleepovers and other large events of children gathering without masks has been very difficult as we have tried to stop the spread of COVID.
I would echo 100%. I think when we go into our communities, it's easy to identify when somebody's not wearing a mask or not socially distancing. And so that behavior, what happens outside of the schoolhouse, definitely impacts what happens inside the schoolhouse. Within our school communities, we have very solid mitigation protocols that we heavily enforce. But it becomes difficult to make sure that same level of care happens evenings and weekends.
Hi, Lily. This is John Caruth. The only thing I would add to that is, besides those social gatherings that Andy mentioned, were things like club sports, where there's large gatherings associated with those as well. We've seen that transmission happen there. And to that point, what I would just like to also emphasize is both our experience, and I think what our Pima County data are showing, is that transmission is happening in the community and not within our schools, which is encouraging. So it's really a matter of, if we can get on top of some of those things, then we can continue to protect our ability to maintain school.
Next, we'll move to Danielle Lerner.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for taking my question. In speaking with many school leaders, including those who are with us today, there's a lot of frustration. They're overwhelmed in making these decisions. As we know, we're local control, so these decisions are up to the districts. What additional guidance, what additional steps can the state offer our districts to help them make these difficult decisions?
I can kick that one off. Thank you for the question, Danielle. That I think even just in hearing about the differences between Mesa Public Schools and Roosevelt School District, that are both in Maricopa County but have very unique local context in making those decisions, I think that exemplifies why there's not a one-size-fits-all model. And that is one of the challenges we face as state leaders in making policies and making recommendations. We have many schools that are still in distance learning mode. The majority of our schools across the state are in hybrid learning mode. We have some schools that have been doing in-person 100% since August 17th. And so that is a challenge for us. But I think that we continue to collaborate really closely in thinking about what are the greatest needs our schools are facing, and working with our various task forces, thinking about the social emotional needs. So I think that we still have work to do, definitely, and I'm looking ahead to the next legislative session to be thinking about how can we collaborate with our lawmakers and really making sure that the schools, our education system is considered to be a high priority, and that it is one of, if not one of the most essential services that our communities have.
I think you did a nice job answering. I don't have anything to add.
Next, we'll move to Juan Juarez.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. So as we talked about, getting ready to get the increase of the cases as the time continues reaching, Thanksgiving and the holidays. Obviously, we're preparing for that right now at this point, but at what point would the state health department, and then also you as a superintendent for the state, would be recommending for districts to actually move to 100% online learning like we did during the peak of the pandemic that we had in the summer? I understand that there's a couple of school districts that were teaching online and in person that are now deciding to do 100% online again only. So at what point should we expect to see a change in your recommendation if things do get out of control in the case of cases going up dramatically?
So thanks, Juan. This is Dr. Kristen. I can take that question. We monitor our benchmarks for our schools on a weekly basis and make recommendations to our local public health departments and our school districts. With each school district having its own unique needs and communities that it has to serve, we recommend that when one of those benchmarks goes into the red, that our school districts work with their local public health departments to get the recommendations for that specific community. At 3 is when we would make the recommendation to consider going back to a virtual learning environment. But again, that's going to depend on the unique circumstances within that county and within that community. And that would be a decision then that the school administrators would make with the local public health departments.
Next, we'll go to Howie Fisher.
There we go. Hi, guys. Hey, a couple of quick things that came up. I was very curious for the doctor. There was a comment in here about additional surveillance testing around the schools. What exactly are you talking about there?
Absolutely. So, hi, Howie. This is Dr. Christ. What we're looking at is putting up pilot programs with specific school districts with the intent of expanding them statewide. That would offer free weekly routine surveillance testing for teachers. We're working with ASU on implementing that and establishing testing locations within the school districts, and then the next will be approaching certain school districts to participate in the initial pilot.
Okay, but only for teachers at this point? We're not talking about testing students or any of that?
The ASU testing is free to all of the communities. Those sites will actually be also available to those communities, so families and students could take a benefit of that. However, we will also be working with the schools to implement symptomatic testing as well as contact tracing and outbreak testing with the rapid tests as well. So there's a whole, it's a whole testing program that will be established within the pilot districts.
And then one other quick question. You mentioned the 90% of these complaints are addressed/resolved. I'm not sure I understand what that means, whether that means you go there and there's nothing happening, you go there, you close them down, you buy them a drink. I mean, I don't know. What does that 90% mean?
So it's a combination between the first two options. So it depends on the severity of the complaint. If it's a minor complaint where somebody calls up or leaves online that they saw a family walk into a restaurant without a mask, that may prompt a call with education and technical assistance and a warning that if we get another complaint, we will be on site. However, if it is more severe, like we've got an establishment acting as a nightclub, people aren't seated, they're not wearing masks, they're not enforcing physical distancing, then we will go on site. We've completed over 450 on-site complaint investigations, and we've closed some facilities down. I'm not aware of one that we've bought a drink yet, though.
Next, we'll go to Nicole Gregg.
Hi, all. Thanks for taking my question. Dr. Christ, I have a two-part question for you. You know, you talk about cases rising on high alert, but no new actions. Is the state acting irresponsibly by not imposing any new mitigation efforts that could help keep more people from getting really this unforgiving virus?
So we continue to monitor the data on a daily basis. There have been things that have been implemented as we've moved into moderate. Most of the state currently is in a moderate benchmark, but we are discussing mitigation strategies for when counties do move back into substantial. That would require we would work with the local health departments to identify what strategies we could implement, because each community is going to have different factors playing a role. But we are looking at those mitigation strategies right now.
And next we will move to Dylan Rosenblatt.
Hello. So I'm curious, I mean, as Arizona's numbers continue to increase and across the entire country, we're seeing record numbers of positive cases every day. Whatever Arizona is doing right now does not seem to be working as well as it did before. I know Utah just announced that they were going to have a statewide mask mandate. I'm curious for the both of you, how you think a statewide mandate could help Arizona, especially trickling down to making sure that students are safe in schools.
So thanks, Dylan. Right now, 100% of Arizona is covered by some sort of mask mandate, whether that is a countywide mandate in some of our most populous counties, including Maricopa, Pima, Yuma, and Coconino, or it's a city mandate, or it's a statewide mandate to wear a mask if you work or are using any of the establishments that AZDHS is currently requiring to host those mitigation strategies. So that would include restaurants, bars and nightclubs acting as restaurants, gyms, indoor movie theaters, and there's also a statewide executive order requiring all school districts to have a policy for enforcing mask use. So we continue to monitor and see how that is going. What we need every Arizonan to do is to not let their guard down and remain vigilant and to continue practicing all of those mitigation strategies. Superintendent?
The only thing I would add is, and again, just thinking about schools as being one of our most essential services, and already that the recommendation is within 8 out of our 15 counties to not have winter sport competitions or practices. If the numbers keep going up, that's only going to increase, and that can contribute, having the different contact sports can contribute to outbreaks in our schools. And I know that with part of Utah's executive order today was to suspend or cancel their extracurriculars as well. So I think that Arizona families need to be on alert that we are headed in that direction of potentially having less and less of a possibility to continue with winter sports.
Nicole, we'll go back to you. I apologize if you said you had a 2-part question and we cut you off too soon. So please go ahead with your second part. My apologies.
That's okay. It was just to Dr. Krista as well. Can you please elaborate why the governor is not part of this press conference?
So this was a press conference that I was invited to be a part of due to the concerns about COVID in our schools. And so, we have been partnering with each other on many different initiatives, including the development of the benchmarks, this Healthy Kids Open Schools. And so
Nicole, if I could add to that, this is Superintendent Kathy Hoffman, that I convened this press conference, and I really want the focus to be on the intersection and collaboration between public schools and public health.
All right, folks, thank you so much for being with us today. That's all the time we have. Please reach out to either of our departments if you have any follow-up questions, and we'll be sure to work with you. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.